We have another bumper weekend of football coming your way this weekend. We have 9 games. We're going to try and find you 9 winners. There's some tight ones. Stick around, enjoy. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Hope you enjoy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 33 for season 2025. We're flying through the season. It's round 11 coming up this weekend. We've got a preview episode coming your way today. All 9 matches are going to be previewed, and our tips at the end of the episode, as always. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, podcast, Apple Podcasts, that is. Anywhere, wherever you are, make sure you rate the podcast, you like it, you subscribe or follow, whatever it is, do it there. We do 2 podcasts every week. This is our preview episode. We also do a review episode, which goes live every Monday after the weekend of football to review all the games. Also, don't forget to head over to the YouTube channel. We post plenty of other videos over there. We're almost up to bye weeks, so next week we will be doing mid-season reviews for every team as they come up to their bye. So go check out that on the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any videos. Let's jump into this weekend's football. There's 9 games. There's some interesting games coming up. So let's have a look at it and see what we can come up with and see if we can't find 9 of 9 winners this weekend. We lead off on Thursday night with what is the All Aussie Rules game of the round. It's Geelong v the Bulldogs. Massive game for both teams. 7th on the ladder v 5th on the ladder. It's down at the Cattery. It's the Bailey Smith Cup, as some people are calling it. It should be, hopefully, a really good game. These 2 teams played an absolute cracker last year. The first time they met, which was like gather round last year, Geelong managed to get over the line by 4 points in that one. They met again later in the year, and the Doggies tore them apart. So, it's going to be an interesting one. The Doggies do have a decent record against Geelong, and they have a decent record over the last couple of years at the Cattery. I think they've won the last 2 there, so that shall be an interesting one. So over the last couple of years, the Doggies have an okay record, but you go back a few more years, it's all Geelong. They've won 7 out of the last 10, but the Doggies have won 2 of the last 3, and the one they lost was by 4 points last year in gather round. Both teams really, really good offense, solid defenses, not the best, but very solid defenses for both teams. It's hard to predict an easy winner in this game. It should be a close game, but I mean, strange things happen. The Doggies midfield is clearly one of, if not the best midfields, certainly depth-wise, in the AFL. They have an extraordinary amount of talent in that midfield. Teams have been announced. No Treloar back yet for the Doggies, but they've got Oscar Baker coming in for Arthur Jones. Meanwhile, for Geelong, they have 3 changes forced through injury. Connor O'Sullivan, Paddy Dangerfield and Jake Bowers go out. Meanwhile, they get Tom Stewart back, which is huge for them. Reece Stanley also coming back, and Ted Closey. Mitch Duncan is playing his 300th game, so a big occasion for him and for the Cats coming up this weekend. It should be an interesting game, because I think you look at the Doggies midfield, Bont's playing extraordinary since he's come back from injury so far. Ed Richards and Tom Liberatore are both, at the moment, in my All Aussie Rules ranking system, top 10 players for this season. So they're absolutely smashing it. Bailey Dale obviously had 49 touches last week. If teams just leave him to do whatever he wants down back, he's just going to rack them up again. Certainly won't be as easy against this Geelong team, I think, as compared to what it was last week against the Bombers. Joel Frazier is showing good signs. I think he's ranked about 97th in the league at the moment in my ranking system, so he's going really well as well. You chuck in Sam Davidson on the wing. They just have a lot of strength in that midfield lineup, and that's only going to strengthen when Adam Treloar's back. Obviously, Sam Darcy's not back yet. Cody Waitman's not back yet. So they've got a lot of room for improvement, the Bulldogs. And yeah, they're absolutely flying at the moment. They're playing some really good football. On the other side of the fence, Geelong, they kind of do it a different way. They don't have... Well, previously, they haven't really had that dominant midfielder. They haven't really had that huge amount of star talent. They have a lot of really good talent, though. Max Holmes been playing really well. Bailey Smith has had an outstanding start to his career at Geelong. His season so far this year is really, really exceptionally good, and that has helped him. Blixarves has been running in the ruck lately, and he's done a really good job. That won't be required this week, obviously. But, yeah, things are just looking really good in Geelong land. Tom Stewart obviously back this week as well. I think he hasn't probably been as good this year so far as what he was last year. But there's no reason to believe that he won't get back to that sort of form, whether it's this week or further down the track. Probably a pretty high-scoring game. Both teams score pretty highly, so wouldn't surprise me at all to see both teams cracking the 100 here. I'm hoping it's a cracker. Whether it is or not, I guess we'll find out. Both teams coming off similar score lines last week. Geelong 115 to 39 against Port Adelaide, and Bulldogs 127 to 36 against the Bombers. So both coming off absolute smashings. They both lost the week before in tight contests, and then the week before that they both won. So the Doggies putting together a really good season. They won 4 of their last 5. They won 6 out of 10. Had quite a few close losses this year as well as a couple absolute floggings of opposition. So things couldn't be going better in Bulldog land, I don't think. When they lost Bont early in pre-season, things didn't look great for them. They then lost their best key forward in Sam Darcy after round 6. But it just keeps plugging away for them. And their main issue over recent years has been that consistency factor. They've always shown that they can do this, where they play really good football. But then they sprinkle in bad results in the middle, which just hurts them in the end. Whereas this year, they've been very consistent. They've lost close ones, and then when they win, they kind of do it quite effectively. Like, over the last 5 weeks, the 4 games they've won, the closest has been their game against GWS, which was a GWS home game, and they won that one by like 32 points. So things are flying in Bulldog land. Cats, they've been playing a lot more closer games than the Bulldogs. Outside of them absolutely smacking Port Adelaide last week, the 2 weeks before that were really tight. 4-point loss to GWS, 3-point win against Collingwood, 18-point loss to Carlton, and a 7-point win against Hawthorn. So a lot closer games so far for Geelong, which is probably a positive in a lot of ways. But also Bulldogs it's hard to go past them. They're just playing some really exciting and good football at the moment. And in all honesty, I'm finding it hard to tip against them this week. I know it's at the Cattery. Geelong are playing good football, but so are the Dogs. It's going to be, in the end, the market will probably tell you Geelong are slight favourites, as they probably should be. They're the home team. They're sitting, 7th on the ladder, coming off a really good win. But, I'll probably be looking towards the Bulldogs winning this one as my tip, I reckon. We'll move on to game number 2 for the weekend. This one is Friday night. It's dream time at the G. It's the Bombers v the Tigers. Traditional game this year. It's on Friday night instead of the Saturday night. It's 10th on the ladder Bombers v 16th on the ladder Richmond. Both had very interesting seasons so far. What I mean by that is Essendon probably not much was not too much was expected of them this year. They obviously want to play finals, but it wasn't really expected. And so far, I mean, they've had some stinking games, but they've also managed to beat the teams below them. So that is a positive for them, that they are winning the games they should, which would suggest to you that they probably win this one. On the other side of the fence, Richmond, they have been competing. They've won 3 games, which is definitely more than most people would have expected them to have after 10 rounds. So life's going pretty good for them. They don't want to win too many more. They probably want some high draft picks. But, yeah, things looking good. Bombers will go in massive favourites here. I mean, they've won the last couple Dreamtimes. The last 2 they've won last year and the year before. Before that, it was obviously a Richmond domination in this matchup, which is due a lot to the fact that Richmond were obviously having those years of dominance between 2017 and 2020, even 2021, 22. They still were playing pretty good football, whereas Essendon perhaps have not had great periods of success over that time. You look at the numbers, the Bombers should win this. I know they were absolutely horrible last week, but they were playing against one of the best teams in the competition. You look at the stats, offensively, the Bombers are quite a bit better, but it's defensively where the Bombers should take control of this game. Their defense is certainly better than Richmond's on numbers alone across the board. Their defense should just be too strong. I can't see it being one of the all-time classic games. It's not going to be high-skilled. It might be close, it might be entertaining, but it's not going to be one of those pure skill games where you can't look away. But it could well be close, but the Bombers should be too strong, I think. Zach Merritt was really quiet last week. I expect a bounce-back performance from him. He has had a great season. Last week was not great, but expect to see him bounce back. And, I mean, the Bombers expect to see them play a lot better than they did last week. Richmond, they'll be happy just competing, as they are most weeks, I think. If they can put in a good four-quarter performance, they can take this game all the way to the end of the game with still a shot at winning it. I think that would be a massive, massive achievement for them. Obviously, Tom Lynch going out this week means they're one key forward short there. We'll see how that plays out, but it's going to be tough for the Tigers, but I certainly wouldn't be writing them off. Obviously, they have won 3 games this year, and they've won 2 of their last 5. That Gold Coast win obviously was outstanding, as well as winning 2 of 5. They only lost by 4 points last week, so it could have been 3 of 5. Imagine if they had won 3 out of their last 5. That would be nuts. Other side of the fence, as I said, Bombers are beating teams below them, including Sydney, which is actually a really good win when Sydney went out and beat Carlton last week. So that's a good win. The rest of them are against teams pretty low on the ladder, but still, they're 5-4 from 9 games. They've played 1 less game than everybody else, and they're sitting 10th on the ladder. So things aren't terrible in Bomberland. They just need to tidy up some of these really bad performances, like their round 2 performance against Adelaide, their round 10 performance against the Bulldogs. Those sort of games they need to get out of their system. And if you're going to lose those ones, you want to be still competitive. Lose by 5, 6 goals maybe, not losing by 10 to 15 goals, basically. The game against Collingwood was much better. They only lost by 41 points. They were in that game for certainly the first 2.5 quarters. So more performances like that, and like the wins against the lower ranked teams, and they'll set themselves up for success in future years. It's probably too much to consider it this year, but at the same time, they have 5 wins out of 9 games. You're probably going to want 13 wins to play finals. You're going to need at least 13, I reckon. So 8 wins in their last 14 games is a tough ask. There's no doubt about it, but this is certainly a winnable game here. They win this and they're 6-4. You certainly can't write them off. You've got to be thinking they are a chance to play finals. So we'll see how that goes. We'll get to my tips, as I said, at the end of this episode. We move to Saturday football. And we lead off with Carlton hosting GWS at Marvel Stadium. This is the first of 2 games at Marvel Stadium on Saturday, and the first of basically a Melbourne triple header. We go Marvel Stadium, MCG, Marvel Stadium on Saturday this weekend. Little mini Melbourne gather round this weekend. But yeah, Carlton, GWS, 11th on the ladder Carlton at the moment, 8th on the ladder GWS. Carlton are currently favourites. Not massive favourites, but certainly slightly favourites in this one. It's in Melbourne. You'd expect them to probably be favourites. You look at the history of these 2 teams. Carlton actually have an okay record against the Giants. Last year, they did meet at Marvel Stadium in round 6, so not too dissimilar time of the year, and Carlton did win that one by 19 points. Probably could have won that one by a bit more. They were a bit inefficient in front of goal. They then met again, I think it was at NG Stadium later in the year, and Carlton looked like they were going to win that one. They absolutely smoked GWS in the first half. They were a mile ahead at, when I say first half, it was first quarter. It was 8 goals to 3 at quarter time, and one of those goals was for GWS was right before quarter time. So it was 8 goals to 2 with about a minute to play in that first quarter, and then GWS ended up getting out to almost a 40-point lead late in the third before Carlton brought it back a little bit, but still incredible game that one, but probably less relevant than the other meeting they had last year where Carlton won that one by 19 points. Just based on the fact that it was at Marvel Stadium. You look at the history of these 2 teams, it's pretty even, 4 to 6 over the last 10 in favour of GWS. Pretty even over the last couple of years, although Carlton is starting to maybe have a bit more success. They've won 4 of the last 6. You're looking across the board where either of these teams is going to win. It's probably going to be a fascinating duel at both ends of the ground because GWS's offense is definitely their best asset, whereas Carlton's defense is their best asset. So we'll see how that plays out in this one. So you can take that as at the other end, Carlton's offense is not their best, whereas GWS's defense also isn't their best so far this year. They do have very talented backline, GWS, but it just hasn't been performing that great. I wouldn't expect that we'll see as bad GWS as we saw last week. They were quite horrible, certainly in the second half. Losing by 34 points at home to Fremantle was not a great result, but it was a very un-GWS-like game. They didn't have anywhere near the disposals they normally do. They got absolutely smacked all around the ground, and you just don't see that from them too often. So I would expect we'll see a better result or a better performance from them this week. However, the issue is they've only won 1 out of their last 5 games. They went from really starting this season hot to all of a sudden just really struggling to even get a win. Their one win in this streak was in Victoria. It was down at the GMHBA Stadium against Geelong. So that was a really good win for them. But the other 4 weeks in the last 5-week period has been really quite poor. They lost to Adelaide in heavy rain conditions 5 weeks ago. They then got beaten by the Doggies at home. They lost to Sydney at the SCG. They obviously beat Geelong. And then last week they lost to Fremantle at home as well. So not a great stretch for them. It's certainly dropped them from being one of the title contenders to all of a sudden people thinking that they're done. Let's not get carried away. They've still got a lot of talent on that team, but they also did lose a lot of talent over the off-season. And we did suggest that maybe the depth was going to be their biggest issue this year. And maybe that is the case. Maybe it's not. Who knows? On the other side of the fence, Carlton have started to look a little bit better. Obviously, they had a stinking start to the season. They've got themselves to 4-6. They've won 3 out of their last 5. The Geelong win was a really good one. Outside of that, most of their wins are against lower-ranked teams. Obviously lost up in Sydney last week to Sydney. which wasn't a bad performance from them. They were competitive. They just couldn't get the job done. It's going to be a fascinating game, I think, just to see how this one plays out. It's an important game for both teams. Carlton lose this, they're all of a sudden 4-7, and their task gets harder and harder to make finals. If they lose this, they'd probably need to win 9 out of 12 games coming home, which isn't impossible, but certainly won't be easy. Meanwhile, GWS, they lose this, they will most likely drop out of the top 8, and will they? I don't even know what the ladder is. I know they're 8th on the ladder at the moment, but they might. Yeah, I mean, they probably will drop out, provided, well, they definitely almost will. Carlton will jump above them. So, yeah, they definitely need to win this game. Their season will only get harder. They haven't played many easy games recently, but they certainly need to start finding some wins. There's no doubt about that. Their forward line can be really good. Jesse Hogan is playing outstanding football again. You have to think that he's going to be a very big show for another Coleman medal this year if he stays fit. He's missed a few games, but he's still well and truly in that race. Toby Green started the season really well, but maybe been a bit quiet of late, so he needs to get his season going again, I think. Overall, though, it's going to be an interesting game, and one that I think Carlton should win, in all honesty. Based on what we saw last week, GWS were not good. I would expect that they'll play more their normal style, where they get lots of football, but they haven't been spectacular at Marvel Stadium. Whether that's because it's always obviously an away game, or whether their game style just doesn't translate to Marvel Stadium, I'm not 100% sure, but they obviously lost a couple there last year. They couple definitely winnable games down there last year. So I just don't know. I think I have to look towards Carlton winning this one. We'll move on to the next game. It's the evening game, the 4:15 kickoff. It's over at the MCG. Probably would have been game of the round, in all honesty, if we hadn't seen Brisbane be so poor last week. Could still be game of the round. It's Hawthorn, Brisbane, MCG. Brisbane, I mean, they won the grand final at the MCG last year, so they're not terrible at the MCG, but this is not an easy task. Hawthorn are a very good team. They're in pretty good form, and you just have to think Hawthorn will be going in quite heavy favourites in this one. The history between these two teams, Hawthorn actually have a very good record against Brisbane, which is crazy. Over the last 4 years, Brisbane have been a very good team, Hawthorn not so much, but almost all the games are going the way of the Hawks. They've won their last 5 against Brisbane. Before that, it was a little bit the other way, where Brisbane were winning them all, but that's absurd that they've won the last 5. So, 2023, when Brisbane went on to win to make it to a grand final and didn't win, and Hawthorn missed finals by a long way. Hawthorn beat them that year. Hawthorn also beat Collingwood that year, which is crazy. 2022, again, Brisbane were up there. Hawthorn were not. Hawthorn managed to beat them. 2021, 2020. Hawthorn just have a good record against Brisbane, so that's a little bit scary for the Lions here. Chuck in the fact that it's the MCG. Chuck in the fact that Hawthorn are playing good football. It's hard to go against them, in all honesty. Their attack is probably better than Brisbane's attack, and their defence is probably also better than Brisbane's defence so far this year. If Brisbane could convert going forward, their attack would probably be one of the best in the competition. They get the ball forward a lot. They just don't convert their opportunities. That wasn't their problem last week against Melbourne. They had a lot of issues against Melbourne. That wasn't one of them. They actually were a bit more effective going forward. But, that's probably their major concern, I think, for Brisbane. Obviously, Hawthorn have been hosting Brisbane a lot over the last couple of years, and that might be a reason why their success has been so much, but you can only beat who you play where you play them. Over the last 5 weeks, Hawthorn have won 3 out of 5. They obviously lost a close one last week up against Gold Coast in Darwin. That was a really good game, good hit out for them. They didn't get the 4 points, but they'd be reasonably happy with how they played. Melbourne, the week before, they played and smacked Melbourne. Then they smacked Richmond the week before that, smacked West Coast. So 3 lower ranked teams so far this year, although Melbourne are starting to look a little bit better. And then 5 weeks ago, they lost by 7 points to Geelong. So they've had a good 5-week stretch. There are only 2 losses against decent teams that are certainly in pretty good form, so not bad form lines there. However, Brisbane, you can't say the same, because 5 weeks ago they lost by 52 points against Collingwood, albeit it was a 5-day break, so that is kind of a forgive game. They then beat St Kilda, looked really good there. They beat Gold Coast, looked really good there. But it's the last 2 weeks that is concerning. They went down to Hobart and drew with North Melbourne. Not a great performance. And then last week against Melbourne, they got beaten by 11 points and just had nothing to give in that last quarter. Melbourne were all over them in that 4th quarter. And that's the concerning thing, is that 2 weeks in a row they have not managed to get the points against teams in the bottom 8. I still think they're one of the best teams in the competition. Occasionally you're going to have these little down periods in a season. It's a long season, long time to turn it around. They've already got 7.5 wins. They only need probably another 5 or 6 wins to play finals. So it's not ridiculously out of the question. They just need to get those wins, find their form again, and everyone will forget about this little 2-week patch. But the problem is, this is a really tough game. It's Hawthorn in Melbourne. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Brisbane here. I think they'll put up a better fight. This week, they'll probably be really competitive throughout the match, but you'd have to think that Hawthorn are going to be too good. That's how I see it, at least. Whether that's how it plays out or not, I'm not 100% sure, but it's certainly how I see it playing out. We'll move into the next game, and we move to Saturday night football. Back across the road at Marvel Stadium, it's North Melbourne Collingwood, and this is a fascinating game. Everyone probably remembers this matchup from last year at Marvel Stadium. It was on a Sunday last year, but it was a cracking game. North Melbourne were, 50-something points up at one point, I think. Collingwood somehow fought their way back in front and held on. I know there's some controversial umpiring and stuff, but it is what it is. Collingwood won it by a point. Obviously a high-scoring game, 118 for North Melbourne, 119 for Collingwood. But it was a ripper. Kangaroos will be coming out this weekend wanting to redeem themselves for that day, because they thought they had the win. They did everything right until the final quarter, really, and Collingwood just managed to get over the line. Collingwood will be massive favourites. They're first on the ladder at the moment. North Melbourne is 17th. There's a big discrepancy in ambitions for this season. So you'd expect Collingwood to be going out and winning this game. They have a better record against North Melbourne. They've won 8 of the last 10. The only 2 times in that period that they've lost to North Melbourne was 2019 and 2016. So it's been a pretty dominant period for Collingwood. So far this year, their offense has looked quite good, in all honesty, Collingwood's, and their defense has been really good on the other side of the fence. North Melbourne's attack has been pretty solid. Not fantastic, but pretty solid. But their defense has been torn apart, and that's going to be their issue. Can they stop this Collingwood team from scoring, who use a lot of different avenues to go? They don't have that one person that goes out and kicks 50 goals in a season. But they have 4 or 5 players that can score 30-plus goals in a season. Having said that, Jamie Elliott could actually get to 50 this year if he stays fit, because he's kicking 2.3 goals a game at the moment. Which, if he keeps that up for the season, he will just crack 50. But they can get you so many different ways. It's Elliott, it's Hill, it's Mychek, Membry. then there's all the others as well. So the midfielders, Nick Dacos can get forward. Lockie Schultz, who I don't think is going to play this week. Bo McQuarrie. The midfielders in Jack Crisp, still side bottom getting forward. And then they've also got running backmen that can kick goals in Maynard, Houston, Josh Dacos. So they have plenty of avenues to go, which is what is probably going to be the biggest concern here for North Melbourne, I think, in their ability to stop Collingwood in this game will be whether they can stop them from all these avenues from scoring. Meanwhile, on the North Melbourne side of the fence, there's probably less opportunities for goals, but they have some really good opportunities. Like, they have the 2 or 3 really good players. Nick Larkey, Serha. I'm not sure if Curtis is playing. Jack Darling. They all have over 10 goals this season, so averaging over a goal a game, those 4. Larkey's the big one. He usually plays pretty well against Collingwood. I think he kicked 4 goals in the first quarter or quarter and a half last year against Collingwood. Didn't manage another one after that. However, this Collingwood defence this year is a lot better than last year. Not sure if Darcy Moore will be playing this weekend or not. But against North Melbourne, that's probably not too big of an issue when they survived without him against Adelaide last week, who have a very good forward line. So I just think if Collingwood play anywhere near their best football, they will not be losing this game. I could be completely wrong, but at their best, they shouldn't be losing this, is basically the long and the short of this matchup. We look at the form lines for both teams. North have actually put together a good couple-week period, well, good, like, probably 4-week period in all honesty. You ignore 5 weeks ago where they got smacked by Carlton. That was not a good performance, but then only lost by 9 points to Port Adelaide in Adelaide was a really good game. They then played against Essendon, arguably could have won it, lost by 3 points on a Friday or Saturday night game, whichever one it was. Really good performance there. Then they hosted Brisbane down in Tassie and got the draw. Fantastic performance from them in that one. And then, granted, last week it was against Richmond, but they did get the 4 points. They were really good in that first quarter. Second quarter was a bit disappointing, but they managed to regroup themselves and hold on for a victory. So their 4-week stretch has been pretty good. 1.5 wins, 2 close losses. But outside of the Brisbane team, I don't think they've played much in terms of opposition in that 4-week stretch. Meanwhile, over the other side of the fence, Collingwood, they've won 4 out of their last 5. They've won 8 out of their last 9 games. They're flying. 5 weeks ago was their really good win against Brisbane by 52 points up in Brisbane. Then they won Anzac Day by 41. They lost against Geelong by 3 points, but, 3-point loss to Geelong. It's not the end of the world. They then managed to hold on against Fremantle by 14 points, and then last week, in a tightly contested wet weather game, they managed to hold on by 10 points over Adelaide. 2 weeks in a row that they've managed to win when losing the inside 50 count, so that's another positive. They don't have to go forward too often to damage you. They can make use of what they have when they get the opportunities. So that's going to be the concern for North Melbourne, who aren't a team that get the ball forward that much either, so they'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But you'd have to think it will favour Collingwood, who are very good in their forward line, and their back line is really, really on top of their game at the moment. I wouldn't expect as well that it will be as a high-scoring game as it was last year when these two teams met. I know that this is at Marvel Stadium where Collingwood don't play as much football, so their defence might be a little bit different at Marvel Stadium, but it's just hard to see a world where they don't keep them to a lot less than 100. I would imagine it probably ends up being about an 85 to a 55-ish scoreline. Moving on to the other Saturday night game, and this is over in the West, 8:10 kickoff Australian Eastern Time, 6:10 kickoff locally, and it's Fremantle Port Adelaide. Fremantle will be going into this reasonably heavy favourites based on what we saw last week alone. I'm not convinced with Fremantle this year, but I'm certainly more convinced on them than I am on Port Adelaide. I don't know what's going on in Powerland, but it's been a rough start to their year. This is 9th on the ladder v 15th on the ladder, and I don't know what to make of either team, in all honesty. These two teams did meet in round 24 last year. I don't know if you remember it. You probably do, but this was a interesting game, to say the least. It was over in the West, same ground as this one, Optus Stadium, and Fremantle just needed to win to play finals football, and they lost by 20 points to Port Adelaide. They kicked poorly, but in all honesty, Port Adelaide had their measure most of the day that day, which was a really poor finish to Fremantle's season. They obviously lost their last 4 to miss finals by less than a game. Is crazy. Jumping into the history of these two teams, Port Adelaide have won the last 3. They've won 7 of the last 10, so they do have a really good record against Fremantle. But Port Adelaide's season is not looking good. Their defence and their offence equally as bad as each other. Meanwhile, Fremantle's defence has been really good. Their offence is where it's kind of struggling at the moment. Last week they looked really good in the middle, which is when they're playing their best football. Luke Jackson might be the key to that. I guess we'll soon find out if that happens again this week. You'd imagine this is a really good matchup for Luke Jackson, so we'll see how that plays out. Port Adelaide's team just not going well at all. They looked atrocious last week. They played against Geelong and at home, and they got pumped. Granted, they did the exact same thing against Geelong last year in a prelim final where they just got absolutely outplayed and pumped. And then they followed it up the next week with a close, tight win against Hawthorn. So they can bounce back from bad performances. They did it earlier this year as well. After getting pumped by Collingwood, they beat Richmond the next week. And 3 weeks ago, they got pumped by Western Bulldogs, by 90 points. They bounced back and almost beat Adelaide. But it's just not consistent enough, is it? They're not showing enough good football, I don't think, this year. Their last 5 weeks, they've won 2, and then they've lost their last 3. So they're sitting 4 and 6 with 15th on the ladder. I think they're better than 15th on the ladder. Certainly are at their best, but we're just not seeing much of their best at the moment, are we? Those 2 wins in that 5-week stretch also were against North Melbourne, who are one of the lower ranked teams, and Sydney, who at that time certainly weren't playing great football, and Sydney should have won. They kicked really poorly in front of goal that day. Fremantle's 5-week stretch hasn't been any better, in all honesty. They're 2 and 3 across the last 5 weeks. The difference being that last week was one of those wins, and it was a really good win against GWS over there at a GWS home game. So that's really good from them. 2 weeks ago, they lost to Collingwood, which, I mean, that's not a bad result. Collingwood travel well. Collingwood are winning a lot of games of football, so that one's not a bad one. The St Kilda one was atrocious. They lost by 61 points. Granted, in Melbourne, but still, they looked so bad that day. They beat Adelaide, though. That was a really good win. And then they lost to Melbourne in Melbourne 5 weeks ago. So they're very up and down at the moment. I think their best is certainly good. Unfortunately, we see a little bit too much of the bad, but it doesn't usually happen at Optus Stadium. I know they did lose to Collingwood last home game, but they dominated fair chunks of that game, especially like the ball inside 50, and Collingwood's defence just held up time and time again. I don't think Port Adelaide's defence would be able to do that. So I could be wrong, but I think Fremantle have to win this game. If they want to play finals this year, they certainly have to win this game. Same can be kind of said for Port Adelaide, because if they go to 4 and 7, a bit like we were talking about for Carlton earlier, their season is looking really bad, especially with how bad Port Adelaide's percentage is this year, because they've had 3 games now where they've been absolutely decimated by like 80, 90 points. 3 times in 10 weeks. You're not playing finals if you're losing that many games by that many goals. It's just not going to happen. It's that simple. Yeah, so that's that game. We move into Sunday football. We've got 3 games on Sunday this week, as we do most weeks, have 3 games on the Sunday. And the first one is not looking like a cracker. It's Adelaide West Coast, who did get their first win of the season last weekend. Give a cheer for the Eagles. They're on the board. But it's 6th on the ladder v 18th on the ladder. These two teams met last year in Adelaide around this same similar time of the year. In fact, it was round 11 last year as well. And Adelaide absolutely destroyed them. They won by 99 points in the end. But it did look like at some points of that game it was going to be even more. It was an absolute domination from the start. It was 7-0 in the first quarter. And they were 13 goals to 3 at halftime. So they were 10 goals up at halftime. 14 goals up at three-quarter time. Ended up winning by, obviously, 99 points. It was an absolute domination by the Crows. They just looked so much better than West Coast last year in that game. And that was the game where it was like, oh, maybe Adelaide are back last year, but then they just couldn't continue that. After that, going forward, they just kind of fell apart. Whereas, this year they look like a much better team, so you wouldn't expect that to happen. Obviously, West Coast have not had the best few years, but Adelaide do have the wood on them. Obviously, over the last couple of years, certainly since 2022 started, they've won the last 5. Before that, West Coast had the wood on them when West Coast were looking like a good team back in the late 2010 period, like 2019 to 2021. They won 5 in a row. So it's a matchup that kind of just goes to whoever's the better team at the time. But right now, that is definitely Adelaide. And they win quite convincingly. The last 4 times they've played each other, Adelaide have cracked 100, with the last 3 of those being 137 last year, 123, and then 174 in round 13 of 2023. Yes, you heard that right. 174 Adelaide scored against the Eagles. Meanwhile, West Coast have not been scoring well. It's 5-8 last year, 8-4 in that game against them when they lost by 122 points. I can't see a world where this isn't a 75-plus point victory to Adelaide. It might be more. This Adelaide team can score heavy. Like, they've been able to score heavy against West Coast recent years. This year's Adelaide team can score heavy. So, this could be massive score. Their forward line is so good, Adelaide's. I just don't see a world where West Coast's backline can stop them. I just don't see it. And it could be very, very bad time for the West Coast backline. They're going to be relying on group effort, but like no McGovern, no Yo. Jeez, it could be rough. It could be really rough. Yeah, I don't know what to say. What else to say? They've got 3 tall forwards that can destroy you. Fogarty, Thilthorpe, and Tex Walker all can get a lot of goals. And then they also have 3 smalls, 2 full-time forwards, basically, in Ben Keys and Josh Rochelle. Ben Keys does occasionally go in the midfield. He was pretty ordinary last week too, so he'll be looking for a bounce back. Chuck in Isaac Rankin, who's getting over a goal a game, and Alex Neil-Bullen, who's just under a goal a game, but plays a much different role, but still really effective up forward. This Adelaide team could score very heavily against the Eagles in this one. Over the year, it's 6th versus 18th on the ladder. You've got to expect that Adelaide just destroys them. 3-2 over the last 5 weeks for Adelaide. 3 wins were against GWS, which was an outstanding win. Carlton and Port Adelaide. Their 2 losses were against Freo and Collingwood last week in Melbourne. So a really good 5-week stretch, no doubt about it for Adelaide. On the other side of the fence, West Coast did get their first win of the year last week against St Kilda. Great performance from them. They got the job done. I don't know what to make of St Kilda. We'll get to them at some point. But my goodness, what do we make of them? The week before, they were really good against Richmond in Melbourne. Only lost by 2 points. They were pretty solid against Melbourne 3 weeks ago. And they weren't disastrous against Hawthorn in Melbourne. So, they're not terrible. They're certainly not terrible. They have a slight chance, but I just don't see a world where they can stop this Adelaide forward line, because it is a dangerous forward line. Chuck in the fact that they've got a really good midfield as well. This Adelaide team has to win this big, I think. It's written in the stars. I'm telling you right now. There's not much else to go on in this game because it could be disastrous. The next one is Melbourne Sydney at the MCG on Sunday afternoon. Important game for both teams. Sydney going in as favourites, which surprises me a little bit, in all honesty. Obviously, I don't think Sydney have been back to the MCG. I could be wrong, since grand final day, so there might be a few little demons inside their head there. It should be an important game for both teams. It is an important game for both teams. Both sitting 4 and 6th on the ladder this year, or 4 and 6 on the record, 14th and 12th on the ladder. It's just a weird sort of matchup, I guess, in that both teams kind of had bad seasons, but also not bad seasons so far. People were writing Melbourne off 5 weeks ago, and since then they've gone like four wins out of 5 games, with the one loss going to one of the flag fancies in Hawthorn. So they've put together a really good stretch. They've beaten maybe not the best teams in that period. Richmond, obviously, West Coast, not high, but they did beat Brisbane last week, who's another flag fancy, and they beat Fremantle 5 weeks ago. So they've put together a good stretch. Sydney are just starting to show some signs. 3 weeks ago against GWS, they were really solid. They got the win. Potentially wasted a few chances 5 weeks ago against Port Adelaide and should have won that. So if they were kicking straighter, maybe they'd be a little bit better this season. The loss to Essendon was a bad one for Sydney. I don't know what went on there. I know it's in Melbourne, but still, that was a bad result. But they bounced back with a solid win last week against Carlton. I have to think Melbourne win this, though. Based on what we've seen over the last 5 weeks, Melbourne are playing really good football. It's Max Gawn destroying oppositions. Last time these two teams met, Sydney actually beat Melbourne that day. It was opening round last year, and it was Brodie Grundy who outplayed Max Gawn, especially in the second half. So Max Gawn, I reckon, will be wanting to win this matchup, and he's in some of his best form. Last week wasn't outstanding, but the 3 weeks before that, he was absolutely spectacular. So just look for him to really be the key here. Clayton Oliver's showed good form last week. Petrarca's been in great form. They've got some good young players to Melbourne. Sydney are relying heavily on Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner. Until Goulden's back, until Callum Mills are back, they're going to have to be the two that keep carrying them. And unfortunately for Sydney, both of those players are playing not as a higher level as they were last year. Chad Warner's last 4 weeks have been a lot better. The last 4 or 5 weeks has been really good. He was a bit slow to start. And Isaac Heaney, he's had a couple games where he was really good. Like last week, he was outstanding. Could have had 7 goals and 38 touches. Instead, he had 38 touches and 2 goals, 5. But yeah, you just think if him and Warner can both play really good in the same game, Sydney win it. Unfortunately, those two have not been at the same level as they were last year, in my eyes at least. A look at this matchup, pretty even. 6 wins for Sydney, 4 for Melbourne over the last 10, going back to 2018. Across the year, Sydney's numbers certainly look better than Melbourne's. Most people probably have Sydney as the favourites in this. But if you're just looking at the last 5 week period, maybe it's a lot different. I've been trying to point out the fact recently that maybe Melbourne are looking at a similar season path to what Hawthorn did last year, losing their first 5 and then finding form. If they go and beat Sydney this week, that's looking more and more like a possibility, which is crazy because people did write Melbourne off 5 weeks ago. And even a couple of weeks ago, they were still writing them off. But wins like this one would be huge for their season. There's no doubt about it. Their biggest issue is their forward line, I think. I don't think there's any surprises there. They just don't have anyone up there that's kicking goals. Kay Chandler, as a medium-sized forward, is doing a good job. But other than that, it's midfielders. Kozzie Pickett does play a little bit forward. He also plays a lot of midfield time. Roughly 50% of centre bounce attendances he has. He's their leading goal kicker this year. He's got 13. They've got no tools down there to kick goals. Bailey Fritsch obviously got dropped a few weeks ago. Played as the sub last week. Came on and did okay when he came on, but he's only got 8 goals in 9 games. They just don't have anybody up there that's consistently kicking goals, and that is their biggest concern right now. They just don't have any goal kicking options. Sydney is kind of similar in sort of way, but they just get probably better return from a couple players like Will Hayward. Sorry, he's had a couple quiet weeks, but still got 14 goals for the season. McLean and Amati both have 11 from 7 and 6 games, but they also get the big high goal kicking numbers from a couple of their midfielders. Chad Warner has 11, more than a goal a game. Isaac Heaney has 10 and a goal a game. You chuck in once he's back, he's not there at the moment, obviously. Errol Goulden, he also averages like a goal a game. So their midfield do contribute a lot to their goal kicking, do the Sydney Swans. I think that's everything for that game. It should, on paper, it looks like it's going to be a close game. Most people probably predicting Sydney to win it. I am heavily tempted to go the side of Melbourne, though. It's in Melbourne. They've been playing all right football over the last 5 weeks. You just never know. Moving on to the final game of the round, and it's another one in Melbourne. This one's at Marvel Stadium. It's St Kilda v the Gold Coast Suns. 4:40 kickoff Sunday evening. 13th on the ladder St Kilda, 3rd on the ladder Gold Coast. Marvel Stadium. What to make of it? Gold Coast are favourites, as they should be. St Kilda, I just don't like what we've seen from them this year so far at all. Their one bright light is the fact that Jack Higgins is up there in the Coleman race, but other than that, there's not many positives in St Kilda land, I don't think, this year. They started the season okay, but it's gone absolutely downhill since then. Obviously, Gold Coast, 7 wins, 2 losses, sitting 3rd on the ladder. Life's pretty good for them at the moment. History of this matchup, heavy the side of St Kilda. They're 9-1 over the last 10. And at Marvel Stadium, this matchup 7-1. So a massive domination there. The one Gold Coast win was round 18, 2023. So the second last matchup between these two teams was a Gold Coast win. That was a Gold Coast home game though. So obviously a little bit different than this matchup. However, Gold Coast have been playing a lot better football this year. But then once again, Gold Coast did lose at Marvel Stadium earlier this year to Richmond. So there's just a few things that point towards St Kilda maybe winning this one. The matchup between these two teams last year was, I'm just going to put it out there, it was the worst game of the season in terms of watchability. It was close. It went down to the wire. It was a 3-point win to St Kilda. But it was a shocker. It was a game of nothing. It still burnt in my brain how bad it was. It was so bad. It was so bad. That was, what round was that? I don't even know what round it was. It was middle of the season, not too dissimilar to this year. This time it was probably round 13, I guess. And it was just a 7-goal to 7-goal game. It was one that just kind of was skill errors. It was high levels of uncontested football. it was just a nothing performance from both teams, really. Like, Gold Coast had 137 marks in the game. They had a lot of the football, and they just did nothing with it. They only had 45 inside 50s for the game, which was 11 less than their average. They travelled poorly last year, granted, but it was a nothing game, and it was a tough watch. More positive note, I don't see it being that way this year. Gold Coast this year are a completely different team. They've travelled well so far this year, outside of that Marvel loss against Richmond. So, last 5 weeks, St Kilda have been poor. They've won 1 out of 5, which was against Fremantle by 60 points, which was a fantastic performance. But they've followed that up with a bad loss to Carlton, and then a really bad loss against West Coast. Chuck in the fact that the 2 weeks before their win against Fremantle, they got smacked by Brisbane at Marvel Stadium and smacked by the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. So their Marvel record this year is not great. It's not fantastic. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 there. On the other side of the fence, Gold Coast are flying. They've had their 2 losses this season. One against Richmond at Marvel, which was not a great result, but that's okay. And their other loss was against Brisbane in the Q Clash at the Gabba. Probably a forgive. They've won their last 2 weeks, which were both in Darwin against Bulldogs and Hawthorn, who are 2 highly rated teams this year, so good results there. And their other win in the 5-week stretch was against Sydney when they were getting pumped early. They were 4 goals down in the first quarter, but they fought on and ended up winning by like 40-odd points. So their season's going pretty good. It's going really good, in fact. You'd have to think that this is going to be the year that they finally play finals. It's going to be a matter of, can they take that next step? Can they take their game to another level? We'll see. This is a big test for them. They won't want to be throwing this game. If they want to be serious this year, they need to be able to travel to all states, including Melbourne. And losing to a out-of-form St Kilda team would not be great for their season. It wouldn't stop them from playing finals, but it just would start to sow little doubts in the minds of the players, potentially. I don't think there's anything else too exciting from this game to talk about, other than, like, we got 2 of the top 2, I think, in the Coleman race. Ben King with 29 goals from his 9 games. Obviously, Gold Coast have played 1 less game than everyone else. And Jack Higgins with 28 goals from his 10 games. So a bit of a show, a Coleman shootout on a Sunday evening, maybe. We'll see. But entertaining, nonetheless. Hopefully we get a good game. Hopefully it's a lot better than what we saw last year. I think Gold Coast have to win this. If they're serious, just numbers alone look like they are the much better team. I know their Marvel record's not great, but I think that's the way we got to go with it. The only thing left to look at in this week's episode is our footy tips. And here they are for the season. We're 58 out of 89 on the podcast. I'm actually doing a lot better than that in my actual tipping because, as we've kind of talked about, I changed my mind up towards game time. It's usually like Thursday afternoon I make my final decisions on all my tips, and this week will probably be the same, whereas obviously for this podcast I do these tips on the Wednesday afternoon, so before recording, but that's neither here nor there. We're going with the Bulldogs on Thursday night against Geelong. Not confident. This, as I said, should be game of the round. It's a really tough one to pick. Geelong should win it. Probably should be favourites, but I've just got this feeling about the Dogs that 2025 might be the year of the Dogs. And this would be a massive statement for them if they were to get up in this one. Friday night, Essendon should be too strong for Richmond. I'm not confident once again, but Essendon certainly should be too strong for Richmond. Carlton against GWS. GWS don't play Marvel too well. They're not in great form, so I'm going with Carlton, but probably a close game. Hawthorn should be too good for Brisbane based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. It's in Melbourne. Hawthorn have had a good break since their last game, which was last Thursday up in Darwin. So good little break, whereas Brisbane, obviously, their last couple of games have been atrocious Sunday games. So 6-day break for them, and travelling to Melbourne, not the best. We've got to go Collingwood over North Melbourne. I don't think Collingwood are fantastic at the moment, but at the same time, they should be too strong for North Melbourne. Fremantle should be too strong for Port Adelaide based on what we've seen over the last, I'll say, 2-3 weeks. Certainly over last week at least. Fremantle looked a better team. Moving on to the Sunday games, Adelaide by an absolute bucket load against West Coast. I can see this being a 130-point victory. There's every chance that West Coast show up and it's not, but there's just something inside that says this is going to be a flogging. We move on to Melbourne. I've gone over Sydney, another little slight upset. That's another one that could potentially go either way, and I might end up changing my tip. But Melbourne, I think they're going to be okay this year. I think they're going to be better than Sydney come the end of the year. And Gold Coast should be too good for St Kilda. I have this worrying feeling that St Kilda are going to turn this into an absolute slogfest, and it's going to be one of the worst games like it was last year. But my hope is Gold Coast come out and just attack, kick the ball forward, keep it simple, win the game. And that's why I've tipped them by 20 points. So that is all my tips. That is all the 9 match previews. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe before you leave. Don't forget to do that. Let me know who you think will win all of these games or one of these games. How's your team going? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel if you're not already watching this on the YouTube. We're going to have mid-season reviews for every single club coming up over the next 5 weeks. As each team has the bye, we will be looking and delving into their season so far and what we can expect from the back half of the year. So go check that out. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell so you don't miss a video. I thank you for being here. This is All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is 33 episodes into the season. We're approaching the halfway mark of the season, which is crazy talk. We'll be back with another podcast episode on Monday, reviewing all 9 of these games. So make sure you come back for that. This is All Aussie Rules. Catch you then.